Look at me. Hi, True Crime Grapevine fans. Okay, I'm going to try something. See this big, crazy light? Let's see. Oh, now it looks bad that way. How about just this one? Better. Okay, so I don't know lighting. I don't know technology. I do know psychology, and I do know, what do I know? Crime. So, this stream for January 7th is going to be dedicated to the Idaho 4 and talking about addressing what's happening online that I think is a little cuckoo for coconuts. Let me know what you think. Like, subscribe, comment below. You know the drill. Hi, Kate. How you doing out there? I guess if you can't talk to me on the phone, you can see me on the interwebs. Good one, right? Okay, so what is there to discuss today about the Idaho 4? Why am I even talking about it? Because now that we have an arrested suspect, what could be the problem? So last stream, I sort of addressed what was going on, talking about the roommate, because it wasn't very nice. And there was a lot of misinformation about, okay, thanks, Kate, go murder, go. No, we don't want to go murder, go. We want less murder, more understanding about the participants so that we don't have to talk about murder all the time. And then we could just talk about, knitting or reality TV, which I know Kate loves. So, but back to the Idaho 4 and especially what has been happening, talking about the roommate Dylan. People don't understand what stress does to the brain, especially if it is a very extreme stress, especially if the person already has some stress. So, one of the things that I personally found out by listening to, I'm trying to think, I forget, and I think it might have been Lori Hellis or maybe it was Ikadmal. One streamer, I think it was Lori Hellis, or maybe I just saw it online, but one streamer had put up a post from one of Dylan's friends, allegedly, right? This is all speculation because I don't know for sure. But what the person mentioned was that Dylan had previously experienced PTSD from something in her childhood. And we do know, I spoke last night about something called akinetic catatonia, which I think what people have mostly heard is the term catatonic. Catatonic is when you are in a state of shock so deep that you don't really respond to other people, or you respond in a very mechanical way, just repeating what they said to you, or mumbling, not really fully aware. It's kind of like you've shut down quite a bit. It's not as bad as complete. There's extreme catatonia, which is like the person isn't even there. This is more of like a severe shock. Um, and it's worse if you've had more PTSD. It's brought on by PTSD, by a very traumatic, uh, stressful situation. And then if you've had a very stressful situation prior, it could be worse. So, given the fact that if we're going to assume, and I'm just going to go ahead and assume in this situation that this was Dylan's friend and that she was honestly saying, look, Dylan has experienced a trauma in her life, and that's why she reacted. And the person just said this way. They didn't mention akinetic catatonia. That's my educational psychology, uh, you know, doctoral level word for it. But that's what it would be. And I think she may really have been that unresponsive person that they called about. I think she, as we know in the affidavit, or as the person who trolled Kimel said, Alpha David, um, we know that she not only heard weird things, but she saw the actual person. The person that wrote about her, her friend, not only said that she had this PTSD, they did say that it also, how it was, how it there's a word I'm searching for. That's one bad thing. By the way, if you have your hot toddy or another nightcap drink, or maybe you're doing dry January and you have your dry Chardonnay, let's drink to Dylan, the survivor, and Bethany, the other survivor, because surviving when your friends have been hurt, there is survivor's guilt. This is really bad. So, anyways, that's what I'm drinking tonight. I need some hot toddy. Whiskey and hot water is what a hot toddy is. I put it in tea. All right. So the friend detailed that it expressed it how her PTSD was expressed was she had horrible nightmares, had trouble sleeping, and when she had nightmares, they seemed very real. And so sometimes she wasn't sure, like, wait, was that a dream? Was that one of my bad nightmares? Like, what? So we do know that both Dylan and we know everybody in the house seemed to have gone out earlier that night on the November 13th drinking, or at least going out very late. So, if nothing else, very tired by 4 o'clock in the morning. But let's just assume they had been drinking something. So, she already has PTSD and maybe she's feeling a little buzzed. Maybe not. But if she's not sure about, like, she's sort of woken up, she's trying to fall asleep or she's been asleep, but she hears a noise. That's what we know in the affidavit. We know that she hears a noise upstairs that she thinks is Kylie roughhousing with Murphy, the dog, because she hears like barking and moving around, like some rustling um, up the stairs outside of her door. And we know now that she was on that second floor. Outside of the main living area, down the hall from Zaina, around the hall, around the corner of the kitchen before the stairs going up to the third floor. So from the third floor, she hears this noise and like, what the heck? What's going on? She peeks out. Here's like, okay, I guess nothing's going on, but she thought it was Kylie. So I guess she thought it was coming from upstairs. Somebody saying, I think somebody's here. I proposed yesterday, and I've heard others today as well agree that it seems as if the third floor was the first victims. It does seem that if the knife sheath was left, it stands to reason that that's when the knife would be taken out. The sheath would have dropped to the floor. What happened on the third floor happened. So at 4 o'clock, when Dylan is hearing Kylie playing with the dog and then hears, I think someone's here. Now the affidavit proposed that perhaps she really heard Xana, which I am also then going with, so if my supposition is correct that she had some form of akinetic catatonia and was sort of out of it and in shock for and unresponsive for a number of hours, maybe even a number of days, due to the shock of whatever she saw. Maybe they're also saying, maybe they're questioning, what did she really, I mean, maybe she also said it, like, I think it was Kaylee, and they said, could it have been Xana? And she said, I don't know, it could have come from that way too. So I think someone is here. They're thinking it was Xana because Xana was up getting food right at 4 o'clock. So maybe she would have said, I think someone's here, like in the house with them as she's walking back down the hall. But then again, she was on TikTok until 4:12. So I do believe that it was probably Kaylee, and the roughhousing was really somebody coming in that third floor and the dog being put into that room. That's what makes most sense to me. And then other things happened upstairs. Dylan goes back into her room. The next thing she hears is she thinks she hears crying, and she opens up her door again. And this time she hears a male voice down the hall, and it sounds like Xana might be crying, and somebody comforts her and says, it's okay, I'm here to help you, or it's going to be okay, I'm here to help you. Okay. Now, again, her friend said she thought she couldn't tell when things were like, if it was a nightmare, if she was like, what was really real at this point. She was woken out of a sleep. She's hearing this weird shit. excuse my language, but it is exactly what one would think of in your nightmares, right? Weird noises, familiar noises, but like in a wrong, like you dream that you're in your house, but weird things are happening. They're not really happening. Um, is that what is going on? Perhaps. I mean, so I can see how if she already has this problem and is wondering if it's a nightmare or not, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and she's like half asleep, half awake. Okay, I don't know what that is. Am I imagining it? Am I dreaming? Okay, I'm gonna go back to bed. This is really weird. But then even though she's probably drifting in and out of sleep, being disturbed by these weird noises that she thinks, am I dreaming? She peeks out, nothing's happening. So it must be me in my head. Okay, so the third time when she hears crying, she peeks out a third time, and this time she sees a guy all in black coming like around the corner at her, but then out that second out that where the floor she's on, out the sliding doors. Then she locks her door because she's probably thinking, this can't be a freaking nightmare. If it's a nightmare, what the hell? I don't know that person. What am I like? I just want this to stop. I do think at that point she was freaked out. I think she was maybe, I think she, I don't think in the affidavit we heard everything. I think she was hiding at that point. And I do think she went eventually out. Maybe when it was, maybe she waited to get up until it was like becoming light outside. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced a bad nightmare or been afraid and thought, I don't know, like, am I being crazy? I'm just going to hide in my room. Then the light, you wait till sunlight, and then you're like, I think I was being a crazy person. What was I even thinking? And then maybe she went to go either go upstairs to Kaylee and Maddie and go, oh my God, you guys wouldn't believe what a crazy dream. Or go to Xana and go, what was going on last night? Were you crying? Because I swear I heard you crying. And I don't know. I must be losing it, like wanting to laugh about it. And instead she stumbles into something that actually I think it made her break. I think our brains really do shut down when it needs to protect us so that we don't go full psychotic. So I think if she already had PTSD, that's what I think happened. So, um, so I tell you this because last time I did not have the information about her having PTSD prior. And that really informs that, yes, that I think that she really did have a moment and had a break. All right. So the other new things that we've learned. Oh yeah. So on Unsolved No More, but with Ken Maines, it's a great YouTube channel. I highly recommend you go watch him. He is a cold case detective. He was an undercover drug detective. He does cold cases. He used to only talk about trying to solve cold cases, but everybody has been requested Idaho. So he's jumped on that, and he does have a lot to offer. And he's got this death row inmate that he talks to about things. The man committed one murder. He's not a serial killer, but he's on death row. So look at me. That sound looks interesting. So he has talked to a lot of death row inmates, and um, one of the things they talked about was in the affidavit. It talked about how many times that using cellular tracking, and also there was a couple of actual stops in the area late at night. Brian Koberger, right, was stopped by police on traffic stops late at night in Moscow and on his way like just into Washington. So but they looked like they were talking about, it looks like dry runs starting at least in August, which is really weird because the timing is very strange. I don't know when he moved to Washington. It says in the affidavit that they pulled his phone number and in the cell towers in the area starting in June 2022 and up to the murders, well, and after into November 2022, the historical cellular data. Very interestingly, the day before he was to start his PhD program, he's in the neighborhood in Idaho. I think it's really weird. So it's going to be interesting to, like, did he just come to, when did he get to Washington? Did he come in the fall? he was in university housing, so 2 weeks before you're allowed to move in, like a dorm situation, or a week before, he was in the family, I believe he was in the family university housing. So, I don't think he was there since June, but he probably had to go visit, get his housing, like, go do work. I do not think his sister, I found a little information online. I don't think his sister did live anywhere, any of his relatives lived around there. So, he already by August, the night before he was to start his PhD work, he was in Moscow trolling in that area. Was he trolling in that area looking for victims? The school next door, looking just off campus, just driving around until he found somebody he liked the looks of, or had he seen somebody? And I wondered because, okay, everybody take a drink. Mm, I wonder if Xana was actually the target. Okay, so why do I say Xana is the target? If you remember, Xana's dad, and it wasn't what mostly we heard from Steve Calvas, but Xana's dad did speak, and I believe even somebody spoke about it officially. The door to her room, the dad had gone to fix it. I think it was the mom on News Nation had done like one or two interviews, not very many. And she said Xana and her dad, I believe, are divorced, but she said she knew that the dad had gone to the university the week before and fixed the lock on Xana's door. And we never really found out. And I'm sure Dylan has told and Bethany has told the police. But if Xana's door lock had been messed with, was somebody getting into the house every now and again? Was somebody wanting to get into that room? And why would Xana be the target? Okay, well, interestingly, there was a picture on one of the many news sites about the victims, and Xana was pictured with her father and her sister wearing Theta shirts. So her sorority was Thetas, and but it was Washington garb. Her sister went to Washington State. So was there a early welcome back to school, first football game, something where Xana went with her dad and her sister to her sister's school, and did Brian see her there? And it was one of those things where he just became obsessed. Something about her struck him, and he began following, found out who was she with. She was a Theta. Okay. I mean, research students, that's what PhD students do. I can research about anything, especially if I'm at a university and have the portal, which universities pay to get into all kinds of, you can get into anything, like research any database that usually you might have to pay a lot of money to get into. So he could get into, especially his own university, he could find out who were the Thetas. Okay. Oh, this was the girl's name. Here's her last name. Okay. Now I look up at the other university. Now I find out that girl's name, and I can find out where, and then I can go drive around, find out where she lives. It wouldn't actually be that hard. So maybe it's a frightening thought that somehow he saw Xana with his sister, just, somebody he just saw glommed onto the idea of, and that's all she wrote. Then found her, stalked her, then began stalking the house. Um, I really think it's interesting that the door lock had to be fixed. Her doorknob, the lock on her door had to be fixed. It makes me think that somebody was messing with it. Somebody has, look at me. There's somebody in the thing that says, hi, any idea? I have to put on my little reading glasses. Sorry, people. I am so technologically deficient. Hi, any idea any idea what they was studying the victims? Any idea what, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. Was any idea how Brian was studying the victims? I mean, I really wonder, as I said, because Kaylee's door was broken, because we know the house was very publicly accessible, right, through all kinds of parties. I would assume if he glommed onto her and he could get into that house. We know that there was a time, although Maddie maybe was in the house, but the time that they showed the police coming to the house during a party and nobody even in the house was there, maybe he messed with her door. Maybe he's been in the house when nobody was there or during parties and did something so that he could get access to Xana specifically. Um, oh, sorry. No, what university? Okay, so he was at Washington State University, which is in Pullman, Washington, which is only 7 to 8 miles away from the university, the Idaho University, which is where the victims all were students. And actually, their rental house was just up the hill from where the university started. Right down the hill from them, about 150 yards, was the Sigma Chi house, which was where Ethan, actually, I believe that's where he was rooming. So the victims were from the Idaho University. Brian was from Washington State University in a PhD program. He was a graduate student. And Xana's sister was at Washington State University. That's why I'm just saying we don't know. And I'm not even sure at this point it matters, right? We're just, it's just um, fascinating, I guess, in a sort of, if you're into true crime, to wonder, we all want to know why. Why did he pick them? Who did he focus in on? Um, the victims. What were the victims studying? I don't know. I thought Kylie was named as being in education, but she had a paid internship, which that's not an educational thing. So I don't know what they were studying. They were, I think, somewhere in education. I'm trying to think if one was in physical. I know that Ethan was in sports management, and I don't remember what Xana and Maddie, if what they were in, but they weren't in criminology, and they weren't involved in what Brian was involved in. Um, I think, you know what? Sorry, Gomo Gomez. It would be interesting to know, but I don't know except I think Kaylee was in education and Ethan was majoring in sports management. So those are the two things I know about their majors. Okay, so that's why I think that's why I think, sorry, Xena might have been the target also. I am the whole incel thing. Incel is a very specific thing, but the idea of somebody being angry at women because they don't have a satisfying sex life, because they feel antisocial, they're awkward for some reason, that has been um, discussed in different serial killers. But we know that now, sorry, we know there was a Facebook group dedicated to the Idaho murders in which there was a person participating and they named themselves Papa Rogers. Elliot Rogers was the incel, the first famous, the like father of the incel movement, who was in California. I believe it was California, and it had a mass murder spree situation. It was mass murder because it was more than two, and it was a spree because he went from place to place murdering people. Brian, we think it's Brian because the picture looked just like Brian. It was like it was one of the apps that you can change yourself into a cartoon type meme. Um, it looked like Brian in a sort of like Russian or World War II sort of outfit, but it was in profile, but it looks just like him. And the person was speaking, first of all, in a very know-it-all tone, which sounds a lot like the narcissistic tone we heard that he used with his professor at when he was in the DeSalle program with that famous professor, Dr. Catherine Ramsland. And somebody in the class said, Brian would talk to her like he would interrupt her and like let me tell you. you don't have this right. And she was the like world renowned expert in serial killers. So the person on this forum was speaking with that same amount of sort of, let me tell you something about you that you don't know. And even talked about the that perhaps a knife sheath had something to do, was involved in it. Talked about the body placement, and when someone said maybe we shouldn't respectfully talk to, like, it seemed weird to focus on the body placement, he was like, this is a forum to talk about the Idaho murders and you can choose to not participate, like almost as if he was, their TA leading the class. Oh, thank you for saying that it's an interesting analysis. I don't know. It's weird that we're focused, and I must tell you, I've been interested in true crime. I've been interested in psychology, especially why people do things, motivation, and how people learn and think. So to me, this is fascinating, but it is a little macabre. Yeah, and Lori Hellis, if you don't know Lori Hellis, her YouTube channel is called Children of Light, Children of Darkness and Light. She talks a lot. She's a lawyer, and she talks about the Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell case. But she's venturing out and talking about other cases. And since she's a lawyer, it's very interesting to have her legal perspective. But she mentioned in her last Friday Night Live about that Brian was on this. It looked like Brian, and it was work. The person was working under the name Papa Rogers, which Elliot Rogers. Anyways, I think it would be, she even had, I thought, I wrote down that she had the one of the screenshots of what this person wrote said, maybe the killer left a K-bar sheath, and that's why Ellie was looking for the K-bar knife. Why would anybody mention that maybe a sheath of a gun or a knife was left behind? That's odd, right? I mean, so besides that and the tone, it seems reasonable that it was Brian. And the interview room has named him BCK because, and it's interesting, as I mentioned before, because he stuttered under Dr. Ramsland, who was the expert on BTK, Dennis Rader. And Dennis Rader messed around with people. He wrote letters and left a letter in the library of the university in which he was attending as a student, which is kind of ballsy, right? So Brian, if this was Brian, writing on a Facebook and saying, dropping little hints and crumbs about the crime, is a very Dennis Radery thing to do. All right. Let's see. Also today, okay, so this is kind of an updatey thing. Am I going to say her name right? Chandler Painting. Is that right? Is that my dyslexic detective talk coming out? She's on Court TV. I think it's it's not Chandler. Chansley Painter. She was giving an update to Vinny. Oh, I'm going to mess up his name too. If I say it really fast, Vinny Bertolano of Court TV, Vinny. She was talking to him and getting some background for him by standing in front of the 1122 Kingsway, and all these trucks pull up. Well, so we know that Brian's defense team they were the ones that had a court order to stop the mitigation cleaning team from coming in. I think the owner wants the property back to rent for next semester. I don't know somebody will run it, right? Because now it's like there's always people, will be some true crime fans who want to live there. I get spooked out by stuff, but some people dig it. So the guy probably wants to make money, right? So that's what he wants to happen. But Brian's team got in there. Is it Ann Taylor? Which is, Ann Taylor is, I think that's her name. It's also the name of a clothing line. But there is a woman representing him from another county that's an Idaho public defender. Sorry, I'm trying to read chat and I don't have any moderators. Do you think that it is a possibility that the case may be a hoax? Okay. Like a false flag? No, there's no freaking way. Those people are dead, like killed. Probably throats slit, stabbed in the chest, disgusting death. So that's not a hoax. Do I think they have the right guy? 98%. Yes. I mean, there's always that 2% chance. Like I said, it is weird to me that he was starting school in August. That's when the his program, all the university classes started on August 22nd. And on August 21st, he's over in, you know, in the next town over trolling for somebody to want to kill. I don't know. It just, if he knows somebody in that neighborhood, I don't know. And like, let's say he went knife shopping, and if there's DNA nowhere else, I don't know. It seems like I think it's him, and I don't think this was a hoax at all. Um, so, anyways, so the Idaho, so Brian's team went and looked at the house as it stood. There was no cleaning. It was left just how the investigation people had left it. And don't forget, in Discovery, they will get the 3D scanning. I watch a lot of other TV, like about uh, archaeology, and there's a technology called LiDAR, which they can see through trees and vegetation to see the land, and how it looks underneath when they're looking for, like in jungles, for ancient, old, like Mayan relics and things like that. They're in the jungle that they want to see. So um, they also, in like have Pompeii, they have used this 3D technology where they put something on. It looks something like when you see people work on the road. It's a big sort of oval, huge scanning thing, and it moves really slowly, and it just goes, and it takes measurement pictures of the whole room, so that in your computer, it's kind of like Google Images, right? Where you can go and look at, you can be on the road and you can see the whole road. So like that. Um, Sorry, and I'm seeing the chat. Okay, again, I'm going to call you Gigi Gomo Gomez. Maybe he was targeting the dog. Okay, so I think the dog that was found, and I talked about this before, I do think that was him seeing if he could really kill a live thing before he actually went in to kill people. I do think he killed that dog, the dog that was killed. I think that was his trial run. Um, so that, I do think he did that. He did not target the dog, and I talked about this in a previous thing, but I believe he was copying Dennis Rader, because he was 28 and Dennis Rader, the bind, torture, kill, was 28. I mean, that's who his teacher was writing about and talking about. And Dennis Rader's first kill was when he was going to university. He was 28. He was doing his undergraduate, and he killed 4 people in a family and left a dog alive. And the dog's name was Lucky. So it is interesting that in this case, the killer went in, killed 4 people only, and left a dog alive. Just saying. So, but I do think that the dog that was killed in September, the mini Australian Shepherd, I went and looked online where that acre of I think their names was Colberts, and they lived right between Washington and Moscow. So about 3 miles from either place, 3.5 miles, right in between. So I definitely think, no, so I think definitely he, I think he only killed that dog to kill something, and he did it at the same time, about, like in the middle of the night, killed the dog, got away with it, skinned it, probably went, I didn't feel a thing. So I can go ahead and go on. No, that's okay. You don't have to worry about your English. I've worked with all kinds of people, and I have dyslexia, which is a language problem. So I can work. My problem is reading chat and trying to live stream, because I don't have any help, and I'm old, so I have bad eyes. All right. So I wanted to say that. So we know that Brian's team got into the house and did get to see everything. Now, today, the Idaho State Police roll up and grab large amounts of furniture, and it's wrapped up and put into like, I think there were 3 different trucks. So, if you know anything about true crime, you may have remembered the Pike County Massacre. And shout out to Big E, the docket at Chasing Papers 89 on Twitter. He's the best for any actual documentation you want to receive. He's got it first. All the court documents. Love Eric. Um, but in the Pike County Massacre, which he followed, they took everything of this massacre that happened that killed 8 people in one family in Ohio, Southern Ohio, and it took years to figure out what had happened. And they moved everything off site and sort of like recreated the scenes and kept these people were killed in trailers. They hauled them all, they kept them so that eventually the jurors could walk through that scene. So I'm thinking the Idaho police, state police, gathered. They had 3 trucks and they were putting in like 3 mattresses and 3 beds and all the it looked like they were getting 3 bedrooms. So I'm imagining that they got the girls' bedrooms, the upstairs bedrooms, and Xana's bedroom. They were getting everything so that they can take that and set it up. We definitely saw 2 mattresses and 2 beds come out in 2 separate trucks. So I think they were getting the crime scene set up somewhere else. All right. So that was an interesting development today, and I think that's why. And I think that's smart. Um, because now that the defense got to look at it, I'm pretty sure that whoever owns that property wants to clean it out. So they're going to take everything and they kept it all room by room so that they can store it, and maybe they're setting it up in some place. All right. On to um things I missed. Oh, things I missed in previous mistellings. Okay. So, one thing I didn't talk about that is very interesting is Brian changed his license plate as soon as the murders were over. His car, which belongs to his dad, had Pennsylvania plates on prior to, and up to November 13th. And then I think by the 16th or 17th or 18th, he switched them and had it registered to be a Washington plate. So maybe if his car was seen, the license plates would be different. And it wasn't him, right? He can have the shaggy defense, one me. Um, he also was seen cleaning his car, both in Washington, looking like he was trying to detail it very well, and then again in Pennsylvania, which leads us to question, and somebody else questioned it, is was he going to sell that car? Hmm. Hmm. That would be very interesting if it was said that he already had plans to drive back, which is weird though, because why wouldn't you, even if you drove your car out there, why don't would you just leave your car there? Was he was he already planning to sell the car over winter break? Like, was he planning that far ahead? Like, I'm gonna do this thing? Had he graduated from his master programs and graduated to like, now I'm going to kill people? Because the dog was killed in September and then the deaths were in November. So was he gearing up for this big deal? I don't know. It's interesting. He was spotted many times in the area before the murders happened. They should look to see if he was there when the dog was killed. I am sure. So that is a great point. We know only what a very small amount in the probable cause. One thing I've learned from watching true crime my whole life, but especially really paying attention to it the last couple years through the pandemic and being home all the time and watching so much YouTube. And I have a lot of lawyers that I really like. I have investigators and cops. I have lawyers. I have just YouTubers like myself. And then I have some like psychologists, everybody from different little areas. So that if you think of a Venn diagram and you overlap, I try to get all the points of view so that I can hone in on being as most accurate as possible. And they in a probable cause, they just have to tell a judge enough that that individual probably caused the crime. They don't have to tell them everything. what will happen next is one of two things. Brian will be indicted and go to a preliminary hearing where if and in a preliminary hearing, it's Chad Daybell had one if you've watched, and in another famous one the past couple of years in the preliminary hearing, the other one was, let's see, Chad Daybell had one, Lori did not. She just went by grand jury. And the other preliminary hearing was Barry Morphew. And Chad Daybell's and Barry Morphew's had two separate endings. And that's what a preliminary hearing is. And if there's enough in a preliminary hearing, the defense gets to ask questions of the prosecutor, and the prosecutor, I mean, everybody hears both sides. It's kind of like a real little mini trial. And if at the end the judge, but there's no jury, it's only a judge, and the judge at the end goes, okay, this case is bound over to trial. If it's bound over, it means that the prosecution presented enough evidence and the defense did not have enough, you know, reasons that convinced that judge that it should not go to trial. So if the prosecution has enough evidence, it goes to trial. It's bound over and the judge decides. That's the preliminary indictment part trial. You can also get indicted by grand jury. That happened with Lori Vallow in the Lori Vallow Daybell case, also in Idaho. She was indicted by grand jury. That means, and a grand jury is a petty jury is 12 jurors, what we think of as a regular jury. But a grand jury is many people. It can be like up to 200 people that are chosen from a certain area, and they come and hear evidence that nobody else knows about. Only the prosecution gets to give this evidence, and it's presented they meet like once a month, or if needed more often, but nobody knows what happens in a grand jury. The big joke is you can indict a ham sandwich with a grand jury because only there's not two sides to it. So, and then what happens at that grand jury usually is never, that whole process is not public or made public. The defense actually has to ask for it if they want it under certain conditions, which we have seen in a number of cases. But those are the two ways that he can be indicted. So I don't know if there's going to be a pretrial hearing with an indictment and the whole case will be presented. Then we will know more. Then we will find out probably if he was in that area. The 12 times that he was found around in Moscow, at least his cell phone was pinging off towers, which is kind of weird because I will tell you, one of the things the defense is going to say is cell towers. I don't know if you've ever had your phone that you're in one city and you look and it says your phone call is from the neighboring city and you're like, no. Okay. Or I don't know if you've ever had a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband where you get their call and it says they're in someplace else and you're like, you can see them. They're just in your house calling you, but it says they're from another city. It's because uh, cell phones, if they get too busy, then your call will bounce to the next cell phone and it might be a town over. That's going to be a problem because Pullman, where he lived, was only 7 to 8 miles. So definitely, if a cell tower was busy at a certain time, it could have bounced to another one. So it's not perfect. It's not uh like Life 360 or something that's tracking you directly and keeping track on you. So there's problems with that. But yeah, 11 out of the 12 times it was during very late hours, like 11, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. What the hell? Now he can say, oh, I'm a PhD student. I was driving because, I just needed to get away from Pullman or some such business. But the neighborhood in which the kids were, if they can really put him there with like sightings through cameras on businesses, which they could that night, that's going to be a problem. That is a problem for him. So it's this, there was a thing about COVID and like the precautions that you take, and it was like Swiss cheese, but if you lined them all up, since the holes would be a little bit off, the graphic was showing you like, so if you get the vaccines, it's good. And if you stay 6 feet away, it's good. And if you stay outside, it's good. And if you mask up, it's good. You know what I mean? And if you do all those things together, you're more protected. So if you think about a case that way, like nothing is perfect science to get somebody. I mean, even eyewitnesses can be wrong. But if you have like the eyewitness that describes the person that you're looking for, and you have the person writing on the internet that looks just like him, and they can tell it came from his computer, and you know that he was in the area probably by the thing, and he um I mean, you add all those things up, even though each one by themselves could be explained away, all of them, no. And that's what a good um case, that's why they don't just, that's why even if they find one thing that matches, they look for everything that matches, because you don't want to make your whole case depend on that one thing. All right. Another possibility that maybe being so brilliant and clever that I don't want to talk about that because that is true. He kind of decided to sacrifice himself and twisted my, yeah. You there we're gonna find out. There was a quote by his professor. Um, the professor, hold on a second, because it was interesting that this it was in a New York Post article, even though the professor was cited as speaking to the Daily Mail. So we're getting a little incestuous, like this media from this media, and then it's like a grapevine, like the true crime grapevine. Um, the article was written January 2nd of this year, and it said that the professor, this past professor, she actually explained that the survey, that Brian's survey questions that we all saw, she said the survey is a normal, it's normal for that program. Her name is Michelle Belgar. She's 33. She's a professor at DeSalle University. She's an associate professor, which just means she's just starting. Just means she's young, like 33. And she said that she advised Kohlberger with his thesis, and that it involved questions about people, about their thoughts and feelings during the commissions of a crime. And here was the quote. He put out a routine questionnaire. So it was routine for their department. Um, it was routine for his thesis, what he was studying. It looks weird, I understand, from the public's view, but in criminology, it's normal, she told the Daily Mail. This was interesting to me because criminology is not my major. It's a criminology theory called script theory. Let me read this specifically. Sorry. It's a normal theory on how and why criminals commit their crimes, etc. So I study psychology and cognition specifically, and scripts are like heuristics in your brain. Scripts are what you write for yourself, like a script, right? Like this situation, in this situation, people act like this. They're like little, and then I will act like this. They're little scripts that's how we get through the day. We recognize, oh, like this is a formal dinner, which means I'm going to have to sit and be quiet and not get up and talk. And I'm going to have to probably dress a certain way. Like there's scripts. So script theory is, what are your thoughts and feelings? Tell me the script that you're developing or have developed in your head. Um, so, and she said he was brilliant. She said he was a great writer. He was a brilliant theorist. So, um, but did he think he was so smart that he could get away with anything and be clever to the point of, in that the Papa Rogers even put up questions from his questionnaire at DeSalle University, which is another giveaway. So the fact that he was using DeSalle University's questions in some of his posts, and the fact that he mentioned the knife sheath, looks like he was trying to be super clever. The team who invented what the I'm trying to look here. The team who invented insulin, they tried on them first. Yeah, yes. And also the guy who invented probably, but nobody else really wanted to. The guy, Jonah Salk, who invented the polio vaccine, he took it first with his family because everybody was like nervous, and he was the guinea pig. Yeah, there is something to the fact of like Brian, if it is him, which I think it probably is, it does seem like he wanted to learn about things. There are a number of serial killers who either studied criminal law or criminology, including the Golden State Killer, Joseph D'Angelo. He went to school for criminology. BTK, criminology. Ted Bundy. Um, Ed Kemper hung around with cops a lot to learn about theories and what they were thinking. This, it he was bright. I think he probably had these feelings early on if he was going to be or is a serial killer. I do think this was his first time. I do think he did the dog first to see if he could, and then he was like, I'm good to go. And I think he modeled it after BTK. Same number, he was the same age. And I do think he learned all about it first, but I think it wasn't learning about it that made him like that. I think he had that in him because of probably a brain deficit. And then also, he probably, it's horrible, but there's like a pattern to a little bit like a very strong mother, probably a lot of religiosity, very strict religion. It tends to, we don't know why these are correlations. We can't say for sure they're causations, but perhaps. Da, 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 searching for the perfect. Yeah, I do think he was. Actually, every serial killer who has been willing to speak about their crimes says they were trying to do the perfect murder. And it's kind of like trying to get that perfect high. You can't, you keep chasing that dragon, which is a euphemism for opium and the smoke dragon. But I think BTK, which see, Dr. Catherine Ramsland wrote a book and was an expert about BTK. And I think Brian was really into that. I think Brian wanted to be better than, like, I wanted to be BTK but better. He went to the source of this woman all about BTK, but he was going to be better. And BTK was always looking, he screwed up. Now BTK was before we had all this huge amount of DNA and huge amount of technology. You couldn't, or he would have been caught, and Ted Bundy would have caught, and the Golden State Killer. You can't nowadays. It's very hard to get away with it. No, he wanted to be different. Well, he wanted to be the best. I mean, I think he wanted to be king of all the serial killers. I don't know. We'll see if he wants to be like BTK, because when BTK was caught, he didn't go to trial. He pled and then talked. If he was like BTK, that's what will happen. Okay, so I thought it was interesting that the professor said this was normal, and she had the actual theory that they used, because everybody was still like, oh my God, he made those questions. And there was even a recent Nancy Grace where the person that is like her co-host person was saying they still don't understand that work that he used that survey for was not part of his PhD. That work was his thesis, his capstone project for his master's in Pennsylvania. The last thing I want to say is I think there's still some weird timing that I don't really get, because he graduated in the end of May from Pennsylvania. The cops started looking for his phone, how it pinged in June in Washington, but I don't think he moved to Washington in June. Maybe he had. The professor that gave the report, she recommended him for this, for a PhD program. And he obviously applied to be a graduate assistantship. So that all takes, he was doing that in the spring semester before he graduated. So he had to have been going out to Washington to apply, to meet with the professors and interview, and then to get his housing situation. So I guess that's why they went from June all the way. And then they start seeing him. They said the first one was like in August, and then he was on the roll until, what happened. So a brilliant one would never, I don't think he's following the same steps. I think it becomes more of an homage. Like he kind of is doing a little bit here and a little bit there. Paul Holes, who was the detective who chased the Golden State Killer and actually then was around for when they finally, through ancestral DNA, identified Joseph D'Angelo, and who was the Golden State Killer. And also, like, I mean, he committed all these crimes that they found out through DNA. He thought that this guy seems like he's like, oh, maybe he read about the Golden State Killer and was being like him. So again, these people learn about all the people, but they're going to be better. And they're going to be, they're going to be the ones. They probably want to be like the Zodiac, who never got caught. We don't need any more of those. I mean, I don't know why they don't. They must not have any DNA left over from the Zodiac. The Zodiac was before the Golden State Killer, so maybe they didn't have enough. But anyways, I'm really interested in when he came and what his connection is. Again, it may be Xana, it may not be. All right. Was there anything else? Some person, a friend. Oh, I told you about the PTSD. All right. So we're going to leave the roommate who was traumatized alone, right? Thank you. We also know that I am speculating and Brian Kohlberger is innocent until proven guilty. And we're just speculating. This is kind of edutainment, right? It's educational, but it's entertaining in a sort of macabre way. But we all understand that, right? It, uh, it would be great if you like and subscribe if you haven't already. I'm Patty Lee. I have a PhD. I have an almost PhD. I'm ABD, which is all but dissertation in educational psychology, and so I'm very interested in the brain. And I did focus on core beliefs. So the whole like, what are your thoughts and feelings, and reflective and reflecting on your thoughts. That's right up my alley. Although I didn't study criminals, I studied teachers. Um, let's hope there was not a lot of overlay between the two. Another possibility may be that once was the vegan. Yes, he could have gone. I mean, but it wasn't a vegan restaurant. The two of the girls worked as servers in a Greek restaurant. It was called Mad Greek, and Greek food, yeah, you can get like a Greek salad that is, but it seems like he was so particular about what pans were used, and there is meat served. There's, although it's not in the pan, right? If you know about gyros, it's they, put it on a big huge spit and they just like scrape it off. So maybe that helped him. I'm trying to think of everything else in a Greek restaurant. If it's mostly, a lot of it is would fit a vegan lifestyle. So yes, it is conceivable that he went to that restaurant, met one of them. I just think it's interesting that I know for sure Xana went to an activity and that her sister was at Washington State and that Xana's door was messed with. That's why I'm going with that as a possibility more. But quite frankly, we don't know. And I mean, he could have just been driving around that neighborhood looking. That's what Dennis Rader, BTK, did. He drove around on his lunch breaks and hunted. And how sick is that? Which makes you wonder. So yeah, I mean, it's like there's monsters among us, and let's hope that we're not the one that they pick. The last thing I just want to throw this, and I said it was all about Idaho. There was a Utah mass murder, and it was a domestic violence situation where a wife was going to divorce her husband, and he decided to take them all out together. That happened in Enoch, Utah. It's been hitting the news. I believe they were found on January 4th. So keep them in your mind. It's not really like, unfortunately, it's not a mystery. The cases that people tend to get a lot of excitement about, is because we don't know why did that happen. And those are the cases that tend to blow up when we don't know. And then we want to know when we find out this. Like, this is so odd, right? Serial killers are not normal. And we don't know he was a serial. I think he was a budding serial. And if you watched my entire, all of my streams about the Idaho case, you will know that I always leaned towards that this was somebody who didn't really know the girls personally and that it was like a serial killer. And I think he would have been. So we're gonna, is it midnight? I'm a little bit late. I like the way you're approaching the cases. It's different from all. Well, thank you very much. I mean, one of the things I do, unfortunately, I would love to interview Brian. Only because I'm a PhD student. I talk to people. I do. I love to get all the different perspectives. And then, like any good PhD student, you put them together and you're supposed to, synthesize the information. And um, in the taxonomy, synthesizing is at the highest level, not evaluation, people. I stand by the original Bloom's taxonomy that synthesizing information is the hardest and the most difficult cognitive skill we can do. So I do try to watch all the YouTube during the week. So I appreciate you saying that. That's very nice. And I'm trying to stop by midnight and I'm already over the line, but I will see you guys tomorrow night because I'm doing this every night. That was my New Year's uh resolution was there's too much crime and not enough time. So it was taking 3 hours to do just updates. So I will see you, um, especially my new friend. Is there something? I am sorry, I do have dyslexia. Let me look. Your Do you prefer Gomo or Gomez or Gigi? Can I call you Gigi? You're my first real fan. That's not somebody I know in real life, as far as I know. So Gomo. Am I saying it right? Gomo? Like go more? Like Gomo? Anyways, Gomo, I will see you if you want next time you show up. I will be here. Gomo. Okay. I will try to remember. Dyslexia is a language processing disorder, and it happens when there's a difference. It's not really a deficit, but it is a difference in the brain structure where you tend to be like I'm the only lefty in my family. You tend to be more strong in the right side of your brain, but I've worked really hard to try to be more logical with my left side and make myself more integrated. But um, phonetics is the base deficit. I always spelling and sometimes saying things comes out weird. So that's why I call myself the dyslexic armchair detective. But I will see you guys all, especially you, Gomo, tomorrow. And what can we learn from all this? Remember, I'd like to end with, so what can we learn from this? We don't victim shame. Please think of the victim's family because this is so horrific. But what can we learn? Lock our doors. Lock our doors. And if you live in a if you have roommates, lock your bedroom door. Don't be fearful. As Ryan Hall says on my favorite weather channel, he always says, don't be scared, be prepared. We can say the same thing about crime. Don't add to your victimology, right? Lock your doors. Try not to be drunk by yourself outside, like try to walk in groups. Have fun, but be smart. Always have like one of those things that you can break apart and that makes loud noises. Try try to have fun in a safe way, right? Meet people in public places for the first couple of times. Stay safe. Um, and I will see you tomorrow. All right. Bye.